Garu Rajiva Wijesinha Mata. Honorable Rajiva Wijesinha.
Mr. Speaker, as the former Chief Whip said today, it is an unusual pleasure to speak as the leader of the Liberal Party. In that capacity, I extend my congratulations to His Excellency the President on his strength of character in taking up what seemed an impossible challenge and the eminently civilized way in which he has worked after his victory. We also congratulate the Prime Minister for understanding political realities and thwarting the game plan of the former President by supporting a common candidate. It is salutary that, in addition to being Prime Minister, he has taken charge of economic development, since I believe we need the careful planning and financial discipline that he will bring to this portfolio and which was singularly lacking in the last few years. Mr. Speaker, though the Liberal Party is a small one, we can take credit for having first identified the problems of this constitution and the electoral system which our government is pledged to change. Though I know the parties of the left objected to the 1978 constitution, they did so on the basis of a return to the Westminster model. This was foolish, and I'm afraid the left parties are consistently foolish on small issues sometimes, because they had been victims of an excessive power in the hands of a Prime Minister under the Westminster system during the previous couple of years. We, or rather the founder leader of the Liberal Party, Dr. Amaratunga, was the first to clearly identify the dangers of excessive power and to explain the way in which checks and balances could be introduced. In this regard, I am sorry to say that I received very little support from other parties for the standing order changes I proposed over a year ago. This government was pledged to introduce changes today, and I hope very much that the changes I proposed will be discussed. They can, of course, be amended, but at least it's a start. The leader of the NLSP, and I'm grateful to him, did raise a question on my behalf. And I'm sorry, the leader of the I'm sorry, I confused you with Vikramabahu, my apologies. And the then Chief Whip tried valiantly to get some progress. No one else in authority seemed to care. In this regard, I hope, Mr. Speaker, that in introducing changes, we work in terms of principles rather than engaging in ad hoc measures. We should make sure that parliamentary committees are constituted as happens in the rest of the world, with no authority to ministers, but rather ordinary members of parliament being the chairs. This should be mandatory for financial oversight committees. And while I am sorry that the TNA and the JVP are not in the cabinet, I believe their commitment to financial integrity should find full play in the chairing of such committees. Hasty legislation was the reason for former President Chandrika Kumaratunga not acting in terms of the 17th Amendment and refusing to appoint the Elections Commissioner suggested by the Constitutional Council. I am glad, therefore, that in getting rid of the 18th Amendment, as to which I trust the House will be unanimous, we replace it with something based on constitutional practice in the rest of the world, without blindly returning to the 17th Amendment. Similarly, Speaker, with regard to electoral systems, the Liberal Party was the first in the 80s to suggest change and to advocate a mixed system. We were then accused of trying to introduce foreign customs. However, soon enough, all parties agreed on the need for the German system, though twice there were efforts to distort this. I remember discussing this in the 90s with the then Minister of Constitutional Affairs in this very Parliament, and in admitting that there were some slight changes, but changes that in fact distorted the principles of the German system. Late in 2002, I urged the Honourable Karuja Asure to act quickly, because he had plans for electoral reform, as the Honourable Dinesh Gunawardhan also had, but they'd all delayed, and that government was dismissed. I am glad, therefore, that the Honourable Prime Minister made clear our commitment to swift reforms in this regard. Mr. Speaker, in celebrating the need for reform, the Liberal Party can be proud that alone in government it formally advocated reforms while sitting in government for the last 2 years. I should mention here, though, the debt owed also to the Honourable Vasantha Senanayake, who along with me drafted a formal letter to the former President at the beginning last year about the need for reforms. And I'm grateful to the senior ministers who signed that letter, which was quite brave of them at the time. Had the former President listened to him and accepted, even with amendments, the constitutional change he tabled, perhaps things might have been different. but instead of taking advice from moderates in the Sri Lanka Freedom Party, which I hope will return to its traditional moderation under its new leader, he was led astray by extremists and those who thought the state was theirs to plunder. Mr. Speaker, the Liberal Party told the President in writing in October that he should not have a hasty election, but instead work on the reforms promised in the manifesto on which the UPFA had won the election. We told him we could not support him in an election without reforms. I know that the left parties had also advised him not to have a hasty election. I am sorry that they, whose integrity I used to admire and which I still admire, were not also standing by their beliefs in the way a few of us did. In this context, I should note that Honorable Vasudeva Nanayakkara was slightly misleading in the story he told about the 8th night, because he told me then that one of the reasons for the delay was that he had been told that the present president had wanted a delay. And I know that that was... No, I have never lied.
I can't think of it.
Honorable Vasudeva, you told me that Maitri had asked for the delay because he wanted to take office in the morning. You said that. If you have forgotten it.
Maithripala Sirisena,
yes.
The president-elect,
yes.
has wanted...
That's what I said.
That I agree.
Exactly.
But I thought you said Mahinda Rajapaksa.
I didn't. I said the current president.
Oh.
Honorable Vasudeva Nanayakkara, I would kindly suggest that you never again accuse me of lying, because you know perfectly well that I do not tell lies. I do not even distort the truth. Thank you. So what I'm saying is the story you told the House was not quite correct. Because, yeah, but you claim that the Honorable Maithripala Sirisena had wanted the results delayed, which was not true. Okay. Yeah, but you should have mentioned that in the House. Okay. But the other point I want to make is that, as you know, I have asked my friends in the left, why did they not stand by their principles and join the Maithripala Sirisena campaign? I do think that in 2015, this whole idea about imperialism, about the rich, is nonsense. I am personally very proud that I was not together with those people who have manipulated the stock exchange mercilessly in the last few years. I'm sorry that people like you, whom I admire, who I know are not corrupt in the slightest, stood together with corruption. And I told you that it was not correct to stand together with racists. You and I know perhaps the Honourable former President was not a racist, but the use made of such people was absolutely shocking. And I was deeply sorry that my old friends in the left were prepared to go along with that, because I think you have a lot to contribute to the future of this country in terms of ideas, and I hope that you will not stick to the old practice. Finally, Mr. Speaker, I was told that I was courageous, but since, as the former president once said, I was someone without a political future as a member of the Liberal Party, I had nothing to lose. The real heroes of today are His Excellency the President, the other members of the SLFP, in particular the Honourable Vasantha Sennack, who spoke out so early, and the leader of the UPF and the other minority members who left government in that tumultuous week after the election was called. In wishing the government well, in hoping for opposition cooperation, now for reform, I salute them for courage, which I hope will never be necessary again in our political system after we get rid of the excessive authority of the executive. Thank you.
Garu